Channel 17 reports this week, we invite you to a spectacular birthday celebration for a grand old lady. The city of Buffalo is 150 years old, and part of the annual sesquicentennial observance was held appropriately on Flag Day last Monday, sponsored by the Sesquicentennial Committee and the Buffalo Courier Express here on the steps of City Hall.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kicking off the massing of the colors ceremony in Niagara Square is the Buffalo Academy for Visual and Performing Arts Band and Chorus.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah,
Students are leading more than 7,000 Buffalo and suburban school children, both public and private schools. Here come the children.
Back April the 20th by thanking God for Buffalo's 150 years of existence. And it is appropriate today that we thank our country for this great city of ours. We are truly the land of the free and the home of the brave. And we want to remember the men and women, especially those from Buffalo and Western New York, who fought and died to keep us free. Today, when we celebrate Flag Day and our 150th year, you great kids are our most valuable resource. And we are banking on you to lead this great city of ours in the future.
This flag that we're all waving literally represents the hopes and aspirations of all of us. It's something that we all love and we cherish and we honor. Our military salutes it. We as citizens proudly display it. Our country drapes it over the coffins of its fallen heroes. It's a flag that we all love, we all cherish. God bless America, God bless the city of Buffalo, and God bless all of you. Thank you.
And the cheers you hear are for a gigantic birthday cake brought in by an Army flatbed. The flatbed contains a 20-foot by 12-foot sesquicentennial birthday cake, large enough to feed 5,000 people, and will be prepared under the auspices of the Buffalo Jaycees. You must have put an awful lot of preparation in this beautiful ceremony today.
Well, I've been working on it for about 3 years, but most importantly, we have so many other people and organizations working on it that it really was easy with the kind of support that we received from the community.
What kind of thanks do we give and to whom and for what?
Well, to start off, Mayor Griffin, he's the one that put everything together, appointed the committee, and the Buffalo Board of Education and the Catholic Diocese of Buffalo, they were outstanding. The suburban schools, so by and large, I'd have to first thank the educational community. I'd have to thank Phyllis Chase from the Buffalo Board of Education. She was outstanding. Mike Brzezinski from the Buffalo Board of Education, and Sister John Patrick Russell from Juville College for getting all the children here today. I'd have to thank the AMVETs, Al Bartel, Leon Gabala, and George Franz. They're the ones who got us 10,000 American flags and also the big 12 by 18-foot flag, which is now flying at the top of City Hall. I'd have to thank the Army people, Colonel Dan Torriello and Captain Jordans, for putting together the color guard that you saw here today. I had to thank the United States Air National Guard for the flyover by the F-4 Phantoms. I'd have to thank the Buffalo Jaycees. They're the ones who put together the birthday cake. Joe Bimke headed up that project. And Eugene Wisniewski from Medallion Bakery was the one who actually baked that cake. So that, for a starter, those are some of the people that I'd have to thank.
A mammoth event marking this milestone in Buffalo's history is based on the sacrifice, hard work, and success of hundreds of thousands of people. Their efforts must be remembered, for they are the key to the ongoing chronicle of Buffalo.
Cities consist of time as well as materials. Our past exists with us here and now through the effects of decisions made yesterday, a year ago, a century and a half ago. Our past determines our future. To see where we're going, we must see where we've been. But how do we see the past? Through buildings, words, drawings, photographs, memories. Out of these, we construct a tale of one city, Buffalo, New York. Buffalo, the boomtown, Queen City of the Lakes, a jewel among world cities. How did it all start? Geography shaped our history as it shapes our future. Lake Erie, the Niagara River, our location determined what we became and what we are now. The Indians lived here first, the Seneca of the Iroquois Nation. Before them, the Erie and the Neuter Nation. They lived here for at least 300 years. Then came the whites. First, the French explorers, establishing a trading post here in 1754. Later, British settlers came to the Niagara frontier, the western edge of a thriving colony. Then, revolution. The colonies became a new nation, and this was its western frontier. Robert Morris, a major financier of the American Revolution, bought western New York for 9 cents an acre. He kept what is now Rochester, New York, and sold the rest, 3.3 million acres, to 4 Dutch companies and 2 Dutch banking houses who called themselves the Holland Land Company. First, the company dealt with the Indians. Persuaded by a Red Jacket, the Senecas accepted $100,000 and 12 reservations in a treaty never validated by the U.S. Congress. The way was clear for selling and settling the new purchase. But first, the Holland Land Company needed an accurate survey of their holdings. Joseph Ellicott got the job at $8 a day, beginning a 27-year association with the Holland Land Company that would in time bring him wealth, power, and fame. In the spring of 1798, Ellicott and a crew of 130 men plunged into the forests of western New York and began the surveying project. The unknown land was squared and lined out, plotted on maps, and made known. It took 2½ years. Even then, the job was not complete. In 1800, Paul Boosty, agent general for the Holland Land Company, hired Ellicott to stay on as resident agent. His job, to sell the land he had surveyed. His base of operations, the small settlement located at the mouth of Buffalo Creek. Ellicott arrived December 28, 1800. The population that day was 25, barely a village. New Amsterdam, as Ellicott called it, or Buffalo Creek, as the residents preferred to call it, didn't even have streets laid out. Land sales were slower than expected, and Ellicott accepted wheat and other commodities instead of money for the land. To improve accessibility to the east, Ellicott paid settlers to build roadways. Early on, he saw that ease of communication and transportation were the keys to the area's growth. By 1802, enough settlers could get to New Amsterdam or Buffalo Creek that Boosty wrote to Ellicott, "I take it upon me to request you to lay out a plan for the town at the mouth of Buffalo Creek." The resulting Ellicott plan was based loosely on the plan for Washington, D.C., on which Ellicott and his brother Andrew had worked. Buffalo streets would radiate from a central square like spokes from a hub. Ellicott's early planning decisions still structure our life in Buffalo today. The streets he planned remain. Van Staphorst Avenue, named for one of the Holland Land Company partners, is now called Main Street. Schimmelpenninck Avenue, also named for a Dutch partner, is now called Niagara Street. Some streets retain their original names. Delaware, Chippewa, Eagle, Mohawk, Huron. These streets, their locations, their names, all share their roots in one man's vision, Joseph Ellicott. Buffalo was a small settlement at the junction of the Niagara River and Lake Erie. Queen City, gateway to the west. How did that happen? The Erie Canal. Built in the 1820s and widened as late as the 1890s, the canal extended from Albany to Buffalo. It cost $7 million and took 8 years to complete. It meant everything to us. Officially opened on October 25, 1825, the Erie Canal brought people, industry, and wealth pouring into our area. The cost of transporting freight from New York City to Buffalo dropped from $100 a ton to $10 a ton. The canal became the primary commercial route to the west, and Buffalo sat square at one end of it, at the mouth of a funnel. With the Erie Canal as a major commercial route, Buffalo rapidly became a center of commerce not only for the surrounding region, but for the entire Great Lakes, gathering raw materials from the west, transferring them to canal boats and shipping them east. Transportation, communication, geography. In 1825, when the canal opened, Buffalo boasted a population of 2,412 people. A mere 6 years later, Buffalo's population had jumped to 10,000. In 1842, Joseph Dart's invention of the mechanical grain elevator in Buffalo helped make us the grain shipping capital of the world. By 1850, mid-century, Buffalo's population was at 42,000 and still growing. With all those raw materials passing through, it was natural that Buffalo entrepreneurs would begin to set up their own factories for finished goods. Buffalo turned from being a center of commerce to being a center of manufacturing as well. Factories provided a more diversified economic base, and Buffalo continued to grow. Grain was milled into flour and cereal products and made into beer. Livestock was made into meat and leather, lumber into boards and furniture. At the foot of Main Street stood the commercial wharf. Until 1883, when a railroad terminal was built there, the wharf was the center of Buffalo's business. We owed our existence to the waterways. The waterfront was one of the busiest in the world. Buffalo kept right on booming. Railroads were the next major development. Railroad connection to the east was first made in 1843. The New York Central Railroad reached Buffalo in 1852. By the mid-1870s, the railroad age had fully arrived, a new and faster transport. With the development of a state and then national railway system, Buffalo's markets sprang out in all directions. Railroads meant that markets did not have to be near water and ships. Now Buffalo's products could speed inland and to the whole country. With the railroads came heavy industry. Iron ore shipped in from the west created a growing iron-making trade that laid the foundation for the coming of steel. The proliferating factories needed large numbers of workers. The opening of the Erie Canal had made Buffalo the greatest inland immigration port in the world, and we attracted people from all over. Irish, Germans, Polish, Italians, Hungarians, Jews, blacks, and more, all called Buffalo home. Rails provided cheap transportation. Immigrants, cheap labor. Niagara Falls, cheap power. Combined, they produced a new industrial age. Bethlehem Steel arrived in 1903. Buffalo was a center of the steel industry. Population, 350,000. Indeed, Queen City of the Lakes, gateway to the West. In 1901, Buffalo hosted the Pan American Exposition. From May until November, the world beat a path to our door. We had much to celebrate. The exposition was Buffalo at its height. A combination of geography and transportation had made us one of the strongest cities in the world, economically and culturally. The Paris of the New World, they called us. These films were shot with one of Thomas Edison's new inventions, which he brought to the fair. Caught in a ghostly moving light, a people and a place that saw nothing but greatness in their future. Buffalo was a magnificent city. The boomtown, Queen City of the Great Lakes, gateway to the West, a jewel among world cities. Vibrant, a center of commerce, manufacturing, and culture. It's gone now. The fairgrounds were cleared. The buildings and statues torn down to become Delaware Park and a residential area. The Erie County Historical Society building is all that physically remains. The gondolas and Venetian canals, memories and photographs only. The city population continued to grow. For convenience, businesses clustered near the waterfront and railroad facilities. The central business district grew larger and more important. Downtown now focused both the economic and the cultural life of Buffalo and the surrounding region. Technological innovations in mass transit caused the limits of the city to expand further and further. We hear a new term, urban sprawl, as city uses for land spread out into the surrounding countryside. We see the results today. Buffalo continued to develop as a heavy industrial and manufacturing center. Factories spread across the landscape and along the rivers and streams. The railway system was booming just as the canal system before it. Things looked good for Buffalo. World War I and the war effort spurred production even further. But in the 1920s, we begin to see the first signs of economic weakness. Technological developments, once our ally, now began to lead the boom times away. Railroads, and now trucks, began replacing lake steamers and canal boats in commercial shipping. Buffalo's harbor traffic declined, and with it declined the demand for transshipments to rail. On the surface, all was glitter and fine prospects. The post-war building boom of the 20s produced City Hall, the New York Central Railroad Terminal, and Shea's Buffalo Theater. This was the heyday of the downtown theater district. And though the economic tide was ebbing, Buffalo's fortune still looked strong. Then 1929. Like all cities, Buffalo was devastated by the Great Depression. It was a blow from which we never really recovered. World War II brought us out of the Depression with war production, but it was only a temporary revival. The war ended, and with it ended many jobs. Ironically, the internal combustion engine, an invention Buffalo helped develop, proved to be a major factor in her decline. Trucks could take goods directly from factory to marketplace. New highways sped trucks right by Buffalo's once teeming port. Another major blow came in 1959 with the completion and opening of the St. Lawrence Seaway. The Seaway linked the Great Lakes directly to the Atlantic Ocean. And for the first time since the opening of the Erie Canal, geography had taken Buffalo off the commercial track. Ocean ships turned west at the Welland Canal, heading for Chicago and Detroit. We lost 45% of our freight. The present economic emphasis on high technology industries like electronics, chemicals, and research and development has replaced the old dominant combination of mass industrialization with a large population pool of unskilled labor. Buffalo has lost factories, jobs, and population to the newly popular Sun Belt. Unemployment among skilled and unskilled workers presents a serious problem. The face of our city has changed with time, but our past exists here and now, in the presence of people and their memories, in the presence of neighborhoods and their traditions, in the presence of Joseph Ellicott's street plan, in the decisions made yesterday, 20 years ago, a century and a half ago.
The city of Buffalo is 150 years old. How about the city school system? Are we pretty close to that figure?
Very close. The city school system started in 1837. My understanding is that it's the oldest superintendency in the nation. The first superintendent was Dr. Oliver Steele. So it was soon after the city opened that the city fathers felt that it was important to have a free public school system in Buffalo. Showed a lot of foresight on their part.
I understand this interview, as well as this whole documentary, will be sealed in a time capsule and showed at the bicentennial in another 50 years. It'd be interesting to get a forecast from you as how you see our school system at the time of our bicentennial.
I think we've seen a sign of the schools in the future. The alternative education, or the options provided by magnet schools and by early childhood centers and academies is the wave of the future. You're going to see a lot more computerized instruction. The children are going to learn to work with computers more and more. We have computers in a good portion of our schools today. I think by the turn of the next century, the schools will look much different from what they are today. But I do believe you'll see many similarities, and I think the optional programs of the magnet schools will be still around at that particular time. But there'll be improvements. Schools always improve as they adjust to the changing times.
Buffalo is now doing pretty well with respect, in comparison to other cities. There's a lot of cities that have gone through what we've gone through. Boston has gone through it. The transformation of an industrial belt, textile and shipbuilding, which completely was eliminated in the 50s in Boston. They've made a recovery. Baltimore, Pittsburgh heavy steel town. And I think that we compare very favorably. We're maybe about 3 or 4 years behind in the cycle, but we're catching up very quickly. And I'd say that in 2 to 3 years, we'll be as strong as they are. We're just not going to be a heavy industrial center by the time this is open. I think we're going to find that people will have come to this city because it's a livable place, that industry that is more white-collar and technical-oriented found out that it just couldn't exist in the heavily dense populated areas of California and the Southwest. And I think that people, by the time this is open, that this is going to be one of the most livable and enjoyable cities in the United States, and it's going to be known for that.
When you talk about the parade or the birthday celebration, it was terrific, and those kids, I'm sure they'll be around, and maybe one of the boys or girls that were waving the flag might be the mayor of the city at that time, and I think the city will progress. We're working on the other part of the waterfront now between the Coast Guard base and Bethlehem Steel. I hope we can get some of those grain elevators back in shape and bring some more grain into our city, because that's where I started out when I was a kid, scooping cars in the grain elevators. Our transit system will be working, and I hope it might even be expanded even beyond Amherst and Tonawanda by that time, maybe taking it down to the southern tier so people can get on at the Hilton Hotel or near the Hilton Hotel and go right down to the southern tier for skiing in the wintertime. So there's so many things that can be done, but it's that spirit of Buffalo that I hope remains with us. We're known as the city of good neighbors. We're a friendly people. We're a giving people. We help the charities, and I hope that spirit continues in our bicentennial.